All right, everyone, back at the lake. First hand, I look down at King Queen 9-3 single suited in the small blind. There's a middle position open to 20. One caller to me, I call, and the big blind call. So we're going four ways to a flop. Flop brings 9-6-4 rainbow. I check and action checks through. So still going four ways to a turn. Turn brings a king of spades, bringing the backdoor flush draw. I figured I have the best hand here, so I bet 65, and only the big blind makes the call. So we're going heads up to a river. I put my opponent here on a spade draw, and the river brings a 7 of spades. So I check, he immediately bets pot, and I fold. I get chipped down a bit until I look down at King Jack 10-7 double suited under the gun in a straddled pot. I make it 40, one caller, then over to a late position player who makes it 180, folds back to me. So this isn't a hand I typically get all the money in with, but this particular player likes to mix it up, and he's definitely more than capable of 3-betting here with some hands that I actually dominate, such as Queen, Jack, and 10 high rundowns. So for those reasons, I just decided to go with it and push all in. Other player folds, and the 3-better makes the call. So we're going heads up to a run out. The flop comes pretty awful for us in Queen 3-3 with 2 clubs, but the turn brings a 9 of spades, now giving us a wrap along with a flush draw. River looks to be a good card for my opponent and another queen, and he turns over ace 3-2. So we were probably about a 45% equity dog in this one, and he's going to take it down here. Early into my first rebuy, I look down at ace 9-8 single suited in the big blind in a straddled pot, folds over to the button who makes it 40, folds to me, I then 3-bet to 120, back to the button who makes the call. So we're going heads up to a flop. Flop comes ace 7 rainbow. I check, my opponent now bets 30, and I make the call. So we're still going heads up to a turn. Turn brings an 8, I check, and my opponent checks back. So still going heads up to a river. River brings a 2, so not really much for my opponent to have here. I bet 100, and even before I could put the money out, my opponent folds. He later tells me that the 30 on the flop was just a blocker bet, and that was pretty much the most I was going to get from that hand. So looks like I got max value here with my quads. I go about 30 minutes after the previous hand until I look down at King 10-9-6 double suited on the button in a straddled pot. Under the gun limps, folds to me, I make it 50, and only under the gun makes the call. So we're going heads up to a flop. Flop comes King Jack 8 with 2 spades. This player only has 110 left, and he puts it all in the middle, and of course I make the call. So we're going heads up to a run out. Turn brings a pretty good card for us in a Queen of Hearts, now giving us a straight as well as a straight flush draw. River brings probably the worst card in the deck in a 10 of spades. My opponent turns over his hand. He has ace jack 10-9 with the nut spades, so he's going to take it down here. About an hour and a half into the session, I look down at ace 9-6 single suited under the gun in a straddled pot. I make it 30, and there are 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes Jack 6-3 rainbow. I bet 60, and both my opponents fold, so we take it down. Here look down at ace jack 3-2 double suited in the big blind in a straddled pot. Middle position makes it 30, one late position caller, then it folds over to me. So I know this hand looks really nice, but the problem with having a lot of wheel cards is you're going to make like second and third best straights. Obviously having a 3 high suit is not really going to matter most of the time. So really it should have been a fold, especially from early position, but I went ahead and made the call, and the straddler made the call as well. So we ended up going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes down ace 7-3 with 2 spades. I check. It checks over to the original raiser who bets 120. Folds over to me, and this is the same player that I got all the money in with the King Jack 10-7 earlier. Again, he's definitely capable of mixing it up. I don't think he has aces for the fact that obviously I'm blocking it. I'm going to be ahead of some of his, pair plus flush draw or even like pair plus straight draw combos. So for those reasons, I go ahead and push all in. The other player folds back to the original raiser who makes the call. So we're going heads up to a run out. Turn brings a 4. River brings a 9 of spades, bringing in the front door flush. My opponent turns over pocket 7s. I turn over my hand, and he mucks his other 2 cards. So not sure what else he had, but we're going to take it down here. Early after the previous hand, I look down at Jack 10-9-8, single suited in the hijack in a straddled pot. Folds to me, I make it 40. Over to the small blind, who's the opponent that had the pocket 7s in the previous hand. He makes it 135, folds to me, and I make the call. So we're going heads up to a flop. Flop comes Queen Jack 9 rainbow. My opponent bought in for 400 before the hand. He pushes for his remaining 265, and I go ahead and make the call. So we're going heads up to a run out. Turn brings a 6. River brings a 2. And I turn over my hand, and my opponent mucks. He tells me he had 2 pair with a better straight draw, so we're going to take it down. Here I look down at King Queen 10-9 single suited in the straddle. There's a middle position open to 40, 2 callers to me, and I make the call. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes queen, queen, jack with 2 spades. Obviously I have a pretty strong hand here, but with the spades being out there, there's a decent amount of cards I'm not really going to want to see on the turn. So I bet 130 and everyone folds, so we take it down. This is about 3 hours into the session. I look down at king, jack, 9-4 single suited in the small blind in a straddled pot. Button folds, I complete. Big blind then makes it 40 total. Straddler calls and I call, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes 8-7-6 all hearts. I check, big blind checks over to the straddler who bets 60. Now obviously I don't have anything here, but I thought having the 9 of hearts gave me some good opportunity to potentially bluff later in the hand. So I called over to the big blind who then made it 215. Straddler thought for a sec and folded, and I didn't think I was going to be able to get a bluff through with him now going for the old check raise, so I folded as well. Here look down at ace, jack, jack, 6, double suited in the straddle. Button folds, both the blinds complete. I make it 40 total, and both players call, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes jack, 9-4 with 2 spades. Checks to me, I bet 65, and both my opponents fold, so we take it down. We're up to 5-handed. I look down at queen, jack, jack, 9, single suited in the big blind. Late position player makes it 40. Folds to me, I make the call, and the straddler calls, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes jack, 6-5 all hearts. I check and action checks through, so we're still going 3 ways to a turn. Turn brings another 5, I check and action checks through again, so it's still going 3 ways to a river. River brings a 7, I bet 80, big blind calls and the other player folds. I turn over my hand and we're good, so we're taking it down. So here we're still playing 5-handed. I look down at ace, jack, 10-8, single suited on the button. Folds to me, I make it 40, and there are 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes queen, 9-9 rainbow, checks to me, and looking back, probably should have bet here, obviously having the wrap, but I decided to check back, so still going 3 ways to a turn. Turn brings us 6 of diamonds, now bringing in a backdoor flush draw, but giving us some additional straight equity. Checks to me again, and now I decide to bet 60, and only 1 player calls, so we're going heads up to a river. River brings another queen, my opponent checks again, and I decide to bet small to make it look like a value bet, and I bet 65. He thinks a bit and makes it 300, and of course I fold. Shortly after the previous hand, we're up to 7-handed. I look down at 9-9-7-4 rainbow in the big blind in a straddled pot. There are a couple late position limpers. Big blind calls, I call as well, and the straddler checks. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes 9-6-2 with 2 diamonds, checks to me, and I just decide to bet 50. There's a lot of turn cards here I'm not going to want to see, especially not having any diamonds. Folds to a late position player who min raises. Folds back to me, and I'm just going to play this hand straight up. No need to mess around. So I make it 350, and he thinks a bit and makes the call. So we're going heads up to a turn. Turn brings a 5 of clubs, bringing in the backdoor flush draw, now giving me an open-ended straight draw to go along with my set. And only 1 move to make. I go ahead and push it all in, and my opponent has a little bit more than me, and he thinks a bit and makes the call. So we're going heads up to 2 rivers. First river brings a 2. Second river brings a 6. So it looks like pretty good cards for me. I turn over my hand, and my opponent mucks, so we're taking it down here. A couple hands later, I look down at ace, ace, 3-2, single suited on the button. Under the gun opens to 20. 2 callers to me, I call, and 1 of the blinds calls. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes 5-2-2 with 2 spades. The original raiser now bets 105. Folds to me. He only has about 500 left. So again, not going to mess around. This is the same opponent from the previous hand. I go ahead and make it 400, essentially committing him to the pot. And folds it back to him. He thinks a bit and folds. So we take it down. The very next hand, I look down at ace, king, 10-4, double suited in the cutoff. Under the gun limps. Folds to me. I make it 25. 1 of the blinds and the limper calls. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes ace, king, 2 with 2 spades. Checks to the under the gun player. He's the same opponent from the previous 2 hands. He now bets 50, and I considered raising, but not having spades obviously hurts my hand, so I just decided to take the lower variance route and just call, and the blind folds. So we're going heads up to a turn. Turn brings a 7. My opponent bets 50 again, which feels like a blocker bet. I make it 225 as I'm pretty sure I have the best hand here, and he quickly makes the call. So we're going heads up to a river. River brings a 2. My opponent quickly checks, and I don't know if I can get value from worse. Maybe if he has like an ace, that kind of missed a flush draw, he might make a crying call, but I decided to check back and turn over my ace king, and he mucks, so we're taking it down here. The very next hand, I look down at queen jack 10-4 double suited in the hijack. There's an under the gun limp. Next player makes it 25. I call back to the limper who also makes the call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes 9-8-4 rainbow. Checks to the original raiser who now bets 80. I ask him how much he has left in his stack, and he has about 800 or 900, so he's pretty deep here. I considered raising, but I just decided to call, and the other player called as well. So we're going 3 ways to a turn. Turn brings a 3, now bringing in the backdoor flush draw. Checks to me, and I thought about betting, but the early position player is definitely a bit of a calling station, and I can sense he's a little frustrated with me as I beat him in the previous 3 hands. So I just decided to take a free card and check back. So still going 3 ways to a river. River brings a 6. The early position player has about 250 left. He puts it all in the middle. The original raiser folds, and I also fold. So he's going to take it down. After my little mini rush, I go about 30 minutes without really playing much until I look down at ace, ace, king, 8, single suited on the button in a straddled pot. Under the gun limps. Next player makes it 50. Folds to me, I call, and there's 3 callers behind. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes ace, ace, 6, rainbow. Checks to me, and of course I check back. So we're still going 5 ways to a turn. Turn brings a 4. Checks to the under the gun player. He's the same opponent from the previous 4 hands. He bets 50 now. Folds to me, and I have 2 players behind, so don't really think raising is the right play, as I'm obviously trying to invite other players to come along. So I just call, and the other 2 players fold. So we're going heads up to a river. The river looks to be a pretty good card for me in another 4, and more good news is my opponent's counting out some chips, and he puts $200 in the middle. And here I'm just thinking of an amount to bet. If he maybe made trip 4s, I definitely don't want to raise full pot and kind of blow him off the hand. But obviously I want to get some value here, so I decide on 575. He thinks a bit and makes the call. I turn over my hand and he turns over his. He has 7, 6, 6, 4. So he actually flopped a full house and even had the 4 blocker. So pretty fortunate that I got paid, but obviously unfortunate. You know, if I knew what his exact holding was, I definitely could have probably got a lot more from him, but happy to take it down regardless.
What's up, guys? Wayne back here with you. So today I was in for 800, out for 29.17, so profit of 21.17. I think today shows that, you know, you just got to stay patient. The game almost broke. We were down to 4-handed. Then at the end there, kind of went on a run, you know, starting with the set of 9s hand. So if you haven't already done so, check out the previous video. I'll link it up here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.